Before the story starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
It all started on a quiet morning. The sun was just rising over the horizon, casting a golden light on the vast 3,500-acre farm. Birds were singing, and the wind moved gently through the tall grass. For years, this farm had been the pride of the community. Families had built their homes here. Children had run through the fields, and every corner of the land carried memories. But that morning, everything felt different. Something was wrong. John, the owner of the farm, had just walked out of his farmhouse with a cup of coffee in his hand. He loved mornings like this, peaceful and calm. But when he looked toward the barn, his heart stopped. There were strange trucks parked near the main gate. Men in dark suits were walking around, holding papers and clipboards. They didn't belong there. And then he noticed the official notice pinned to the gate. The letters on the paper were bold and black, like a warning. John's hands shook as he stepped closer. The paper read, "This property has been seized under the authority of the HOA. All residents and property owners must comply immediately." John blinked. He read the words again and again. Seized? By the HOA? That could not be possible. This was his land. His family's land. For generations, they had taken care of it. How could some HOA, some group of people, just take it away like this? His mind raced. He felt a tight knot in his chest. Something deep inside told him that this was not just a mistake. This was deliberate. He walked toward the trucks, his coffee forgotten. The men noticed him and stopped talking. One of them stepped forward, a tall man in a crisp black suit. He had a clipboard and a stern look. "Sir," the man said, his voice cold and professional, "you are no longer authorized to be on this property. The HOA has full control now." John's voice caught in his throat. "What? This is my farm. I live here. You can't just take it." The man didn't flinch. He just nodded politely and gestured to the trucks. "I'm afraid it's too late. You must leave immediately." John stepped back, feeling dizzy. He turned and ran toward the farmhouse. His wife, Mary, was standing on the porch, her face pale. "John! What's happening?" she cried. They took everything," he said, showing her the notice. "The HOA, they seized the farm." Mary gasped. "But, why? We paid all our fees. Everything was legal. There must be a mistake." John shook his head. "I don't think it's a mistake. Look at this. They planned it. They knew exactly what to do." For hours, John and Mary sat in their living room, looking at the documents. The papers were filled with legal jargon, numbers, and signatures. It all looked official, but something felt wrong. They called a lawyer, hoping for some explanation. The lawyer listened, nodded, and frowned. "This isn't normal," the lawyer said. "HOAs don't usually do this. And this many acres, this is extreme. Something shady is going on. You need to act fast." John felt a mix of fear and anger. Fear because they could really lose everything. Anger because people they trusted had betrayed them. And the betrayal cut deeper than the loss. The HOA was supposed to be a community organization, a group that helped manage the neighborhood. Not steal land. Not take houses. Not destroy lives. He spent that night pacing the farmhouse. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the men with the trucks. He saw his children's laughter on the fields, now threatened by strangers. His mind replayed every meeting he had attended with the HOA over the years. Every agreement, every vote, every letter he had signed. Could they really have plotted this in secret? John remembered the last HOA meeting. He had attended it with other members, discussing maintenance fees and new rules. Nothing seemed unusual at the time. But now, looking back, he realized there had been hints. The president of the HOA had been unusually quiet when someone suggested reviewing the land ownership documents. Some members had avoided his gaze. But he had ignored it. Who could have imagined betrayal like this? The next morning, John decided he needed to see the farm himself. He drove slowly down the long dirt road that led through his land. Every familiar sight seemed different. The fences looked stronger, as if they were guarding against him. Some gates were locked. Men in suits were patrolling, watching him carefully. He felt like a stranger in his own home. John stopped near the largest field and stepped out of his truck. He needed to understand what had happened. He walked toward the edge of the property, trying to piece together the puzzle. He saw the footprints of the men who had moved in. They had started clearing some barns, checking out equipment, and marking land. This was not just a legal takeover, it was an occupation. He clenched his fists. His farm was not just land. It was life. It was memories. It was his family's hard work. And he knew he couldn't let it go. But the question was how? How could one man fight against a powerful HOA that had legal papers, men with trucks, and control over thousands of acres? John remembered the stories of other people in the community. Some had lost their homes to unfair rules or high fees, but no one had ever taken a farm like this. He thought of the families who depended on the land, the workers, the neighbors. And something inside him sparked. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about everyone who had been silenced by the HOA. He went back to the farmhouse, sitting by the window and looking at the morning sun reflecting off the fields. His heart was heavy, but his mind was racing. "I will get it back," he whispered to himself. "No matter what it takes, I will take back every acre, every house, every part of this land." That night, John didn't sleep. Instead, he wrote down a plan. A careful plan. He didn't know exactly how he would fight the HOA, but he knew one thing: he wouldn't give up. There had to be a way. Somewhere in the papers, in the laws, in the loopholes, there was a path to reclaim what was his. And as he stared at the moonlit farm, John felt a strange mix of fear, anger, and determination. The battle had just begun. The quiet fields of the 3,500-acre farm, which had once felt so safe and peaceful, now felt like a battlefield. And John knew, deep in his heart, that he was ready to fight. Little did he know, the journey ahead would be full of danger, betrayal, clever tricks, and unexpected allies. The HOA thought they had one. But they had no idea what was coming. The sun was barely up when John's phone buzzed again. He had barely slept, and the weight of yesterday's shock still pressed on his chest. But this time, it wasn't just another call from worried neighbors. It was a photo message from one of the farm workers. John's hands trembled as he opened it. The image showed a small corner of the farm, the place where the oldest barn stood. But it wasn't the barn he remembered. The doors were ripped open, strange markings covered the walls, and a new, unfamiliar flag waved from the rooftop. Written in bold letters on the ground were numbers he didn't understand at first. His stomach turned. Someone was sending him a warning. John sat down, staring at the image. He realized that this wasn't just about taking the land. This was personal. The HOA wasn't only trying to seize his property, they wanted to scare him. To make him believe resistance was impossible. And somehow, they knew exactly how to do it. He rubbed his eyes and tried to think. Yesterday, he had felt anger, but now, it was deeper, colder, sharper. It was a combination of fear, disbelief, and determination. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a plan. A carefully hidden plan that had been in motion for months. And John knew, deep in his gut, that if he didn't act fast, the farm and everyone on it could be lost forever. He went to the kitchen and grabbed the old map of the farm that had hung there for decades. The lines were worn, the edges frayed, but every acre, every house, every barn was marked clearly. He spread it across the table and traced the paths with his finger. "If I can figure out their moves, maybe I can stay ahead," he muttered. As he studied the map, a knock came at the door. John's heart jumped. He wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, he opened it. Standing there was Sarah, one of the few neighbors who had always been honest with him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. John, she whispered, stepping inside quickly, it's worse than we thought. They've already started taking over the other homes. People are being forced out quietly, without any warning. No one's safe. John swallowed hard. He had known the HOA was powerful, but this was beyond anything he imagined. How many? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Half the community, she said. And the others, they're too scared to fight. They're leaving. Some are even signing papers they don't understand. John's hands clenched into fists. He had grown up in this farm, and he had always believed that neighbors looked out for each other. But now, fear was spreading faster than the men with the trucks. It was as if the whole community was being drained of hope. Sarah sat down and leaned close. John, we need a plan. If you don't stop this now, there won't be anything left to save. John nodded slowly. He knew she was right. But forming a plan was harder than he expected. The HOA had legal power, men on the ground, and the ability to manipulate neighbors. How could one man and a few allies fight all of that? He thought back to the meetings, to every word that had seemed harmless at the time. Fees, bylaws, rules, small votes, nothing had seemed important. But now, everything connected. Every small action, every hidden clause, every overlooked detail they had been building to this moment. And John realized that if he wanted to win, he would have to think smarter than they did. Smarter than anyone expected. He grabbed his laptop and began digging through every HOA document he could find, emails, meeting notes, property records, anything. He read every word slowly, carefully. Some of it was boring legal language, but hidden in the lines were clues. Loopholes. Mistakes they had made. Even the smallest error could become a weapon. Hours passed. The sun rose higher in the sky, and John barely noticed. Every discovery fueled his resolve. He marked suspicious entries on the map, drew connections, and wrote notes. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. It wasn't a complete plan yet, but it was a start, a way to fight back without risking everything at once. Then came the hardest part, reaching out to the other members. Many had already been silenced by fear. Some wouldn't answer his calls. Others refused to meet. But a few brave enough to trust him joined the discussion. Each had their own story of loss, of threat, of betrayal. And as John listened, he realized something powerful: he wasn't alone. This isn't just my fight, he said, his voice firm. It's ours. If we work together, if we stay smart, we can take this back. They think they've won, but they're wrong. For the first time since the takeover, a flicker of hope appeared. It was small, fragile, but real. John could feel it in the way the neighbors began to plan quietly with him. Every story of loss, every whispered conversation, every careful observation, they all became pieces of a bigger strategy. But the HOA wasn't waiting. Late that night, as John pored over more documents, he noticed a shadow outside his window. A car parked across the road, its lights off. For hours, it didn't move. His heart raced. They were watching. He realized then that every move he made, every call he made, every plan he drew, they could be tracking him. That's when John knew the fight wasn't just about reclaiming the land. It was about outsmarting them. Every step had to be precise. Every ally had to be trusted. Every move could make the difference between victory and total loss. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted but alert. The farm outside was quiet now, but he could sense the danger lurking in every shadow. This wasn't just a battle over land, it was a battle of wits, courage, and survival. And John was ready to take the first step. The plan wasn't complete. He didn't yet know how it would work. But one thing was certain: he would not give up. Not his farm, not his neighbors, not the life they had built. The HOA had underestimated him. They didn't know the fire that burned inside him. And as the moon rose high over the 3,500-acre farm, John whispered to himself, "They stole from me, but they haven't won yet. Not even close." Little did he know, the moves he was about to make would change everything. Allies would be tested. Secrets would be revealed. And the fight for every home, every field, every inch of land would be more dangerous and more thrilling than anyone could imagine. The wind howled through the empty fields of the farm, carrying with it a sense of unease. John stood at the edge of the property, staring at the horizon. The morning fog made everything look strange, almost unreal. It was as if the farm he had known for years had become a place of shadows, where danger could hide behind every tree. But John didn't have time to hesitate. If he wanted to fight the HOA, he couldn't do it alone. He needed allies. He remembered the faces of the neighbors he had known for years, some friendly, some distant. Many of them had already been silenced by fear. Some had even sold their homes quietly, trying to escape the control of the HOA. But John couldn't run. And he couldn't fight alone. He drove through the winding roads of the community, stopping at each house where he thought he could find someone willing to fight. Some doors remained closed, the blinds tightly drawn, the air heavy with fear. Others opened just a crack, eyes peeking out suspiciously, wary of every word. Finally, he reached the home of Mr. Patel, an older man who had lived on the farm for decades. He had seen more seasons than most and knew every corner of the land. John knocked gently, and the door creaked open. "John!" "I heard what happened," Mr. Patel said quietly, stepping aside to let him in. I didn't know what to do. They're too powerful. I thought it was better to stay quiet." John nodded, understanding completely. "I get it," he said. "But staying quiet won't help anyone. They've already taken too much. If we don't fight together, everyone will lose." Mr. Patel hesitated, looking out the window toward the far end of the farm, where the men from the HOA had parked their trucks. Then he sighed. "You're right. I've seen what they can do. But I've also seen what happens when people stand together. I'm in." John felt a flicker of hope. One ally was better than none. But he needed more. Much more. He continued his journey, stopping at the homes of younger families, neighbors who had children playing on the fields he had once walked as a boy. Some were scared. Their voices trembled as they said, "We don't want trouble." But John's words were firm and clear, "This isn't just trouble. This is our home. If we lose it, there won't be a second chance." Slowly, the fear in their eyes began to mix with determination. One by one, neighbors started agreeing. They would help, quietly, carefully, in any way they could. Some offered knowledge of the land. Others offered skills, legal research, construction experience, communication networks. Every contribution, no matter how small, became a piece of a bigger puzzle. But even as the allies came together, the HOA wasn't idle. That night, John noticed strange movements outside his farmhouse. Shadows flickered across the windows. A car sat silently at the end of the road. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. John gathered his growing group of allies in the old barn at the heart of the farm. The air smelled of hay and dust, and the dim light from a single bulb flickered as they sat in a circle. No one spoke at first. Fear was heavy, but so was determination. John cleared his throat. "We know what they've done," he said. "They think they can scare us, divide us, make us powerless. But they're wrong. We have something they don't: knowledge, courage, and the will to fight for what's ours." A young woman named Lisa, who had lost her home to the HOA's pressure, raised her hand. "But, how? They have lawyers, trucks, money. We're just us." John looked around the circle. "We're not just US. We're a community. We know every corner of this land. We know their mistakes. And if we act smart, we can outthink them. Every step they take, we'll be ready." He pulled out the map of the farm, marking areas already taken, areas still under their control, and paths they could use to move safely without being noticed. Every ally added information, pointing out places where the HOA had made mistakes, gaps in their patrols, or overlooked property lines. It was exhausting work, but something incredible began to happen. The group felt a spark of hope, growing stronger with every shared detail. They weren't just neighbors anymore, they were a team. A team with a mission. And the mission was simple: take back what was theirs. As the night grew darker, John noticed one of the younger neighbors, Alex, pacing near the door. "They're watching," he whispered. "I saw them again outside. Cameras. Cars. Someone is always there." John nodded, his mind racing. "We expected that. That's why every move has to be calculated. Every action quiet. Every plan secret. If they think they can intimidate us, they're about to learn how wrong they are." He took a deep breath and looked at the group. "Tomorrow, we start small. Gather evidence, check the property lines, record everything they do. Every mistake they make, every illegal step, we collect it. We need proof, not just anger. Proof will be our weapon." The group nodded, the tension still present but mixed with determination. For the first time since the HOA had taken over, John felt something powerful, a sense that victory wasn't impossible. Not yet. As the allies dispersed for the night, John stayed behind in the barn, staring at the map. He traced paths with his finger, imagining every possible move, every counter-move. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The HOA was clever, dangerous, and ruthless. But he also knew that with the right people, the right plan, and unshakable courage, even the strongest opponent could be challenged. Outside, the wind swept across the fields, carrying the sounds of a quiet farm that was no longer peaceful. But inside, something else was growing, a spark of rebellion, a promise that the land would not be lost without a fight. John whispered to himself as he looked at the horizon, where the lights of the HOA trucks gleamed faintly in the distance. They thought they could scare us. They thought they could divide us. But they haven't seen anything yet. And with that, the first real step of the fight began. The night was silent, almost too silent. The only sound was the crunch of John's boots on the gravel path as he moved carefully toward the far edge of the farm. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the fields. Every tree, every fence post, seemed alive, watching, waiting. John had planned this moment for days. It wasn't a reckless act, it was calculated. Every ally knew their role, every step had been mapped, every path rehearsed in their minds. This wasn't just about taking back land. This was a message: they were not afraid. They were ready to fight. He crouched behind a cluster of bushes near the old barn, peering through the darkness. There, under the dim light of a truck, he saw them, the HOA men, patrolling, armed with clipboards, radios, and an air of confidence. They believed they controlled the farm. They thought no one could challenge them. John whispered into the small earpiece he wore. "Alex, you're up. Camera on the west gate. Record everything." A faint click echoed back. "Copy that." He took a deep breath. Tonight, they would gather proof of the HOA's illegal activity, something that would turn the tide. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about intelligence. Every action, every illegal step, every misstep would be recorded. And then, they would strike. Suddenly, a low beep came through his earpiece. Lisa's voice, trembling slightly, but firm. "Two men are moving toward the north gate. They've got flashlights." John's heart raced. This was it, the first real test. He signaled silently, moving along the edge of the barn, staying in the shadows. The crunch of gravel beneath the men's boots grew louder. Every heartbeat felt like a drum, counting down to the moment when everything could go wrong. He paused near the north gate. From here, he could see the documents being carried by the HOA men. Papers, files, charts, they were meticulously documenting the land. And yet, there were gaps. One folder had been left unattended. A briefcase sat open on the ground. It was an opportunity. John signaled Alex to move closer. In one swift motion, Alex crept toward the briefcase, camera recording everything, capturing signatures, dates, and illegal notices. Every detail mattered. This evidence could later undo months of manipulation. Suddenly, one of the HOA men turned sharply, flashlight cutting across the bushes. John froze. The beam passed inches from his face. His stomach tightened, but he didn't move. The man's voice called out, "Hello? Who's there?" John held his breath. Then, slowly, he whispered into the earpiece, "Hold, don't move." Seconds felt like hours. The man scanned the area, his shadow stretching long across the fields. Then, finally, he walked away, unaware that John and Alex had already captured everything on camera. "That was too close," Alex whispered later, as they regrouped behind the barn. John nodded. "Too close, but perfect. Look at the footage. Look at what they're leaving exposed. This is the start." With that, the group moved quickly, gathering more evidence from the farm. Every patrol pattern, every misstep, every illegal attempt to seize property was documented. They worked silently, as shadows, ghosts moving across the land they loved. Hours passed. Dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the fields in soft gold. The HOA men were still unaware. They believed they had control. They believed the farm was theirs. But John's group had planted the seeds of a counterattack that was invisible, silent, and deadly effective. Back in the barn, the group reviewed the footage. Every file, every paper, every illegal notice was catalogued. The atmosphere was tense but electric. They were no longer just victims, they were strategists, fighters, and planners. And this first move was only the beginning. John stood by the old map, tracing paths again. "Tonight," he said, "we expose them. Tomorrow, we hit where it hurts most, the documents, the houses, the proof they thought we'd never find. They think they're untouchable. They don't know what's coming." As the sun rose, painting the sky with orange and pink, a new feeling settled over the farm. Fear was still there, lingering like a shadow, but hope had taken root. This first counterattack was more than a victory, it was proof that the HOA could be challenged, that their power had limits, and that the community, if united, could fight back. But John knew the danger wasn't over. The HOA would respond. They would try to cover their tracks, they would try to intimidate the neighbors, and they would likely step up their security. Every move from here would be riskier, more dangerous. And yet, he felt something else too, a surge of determination. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about justice, courage, and the right to fight back. And John knew, deep in his bones, that the real battle was only beginning. He turned to the group, looking at their tired but determined faces. "We've made the first move," he said. "They'll react. And when they do, we'll be ready. We fight smart, we fight together, and we don't back down. Not for a single acre, not for a single home." Outside, the farm seemed calm, almost serene. But John knew better. Beneath that calm, the gears of a larger battle were already turning. The HOA had underestimated him, underestimated them all. And soon, they would learn that the people they thought were powerless could strike back with precision, courage, and cunning. The first counterattack was done. The war was just beginning. The morning was eerily silent. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were gone, replaced by a heavy tension that hung over the 3,500-acre farm like a storm cloud. John stepped out of the farmhouse, staring at the fields. Something felt wrong. Too wrong. He noticed it immediately, the tractors were gone, the barns had locks he hadn't seen before, and along the horizon, strange black SUVs crawled slowly like predators. His stomach sank. The HOA wasn't just moving, they were striking back. And this time, it wasn't subtle. John's phone buzzed. It was Lisa. Her voice was tense, almost shaking. "John, it's worse than we thought. They've hired outside security. Men with dogs, cameras, everything. They're not just guarding, they're hunting." John felt his chest tighten. This was no longer just a legal battle. This was a fight for survival. The very land they were trying to protect was being transformed into a fortress. He quickly gathered the allies in the old barn. The air smelled of dust and sweat. Everyone's faces were pale, but their eyes burned with determination. John spread the farm map across the table. Red circles marked areas they still controlled. black marks showed where the HOA had full power. "They've stepped up," John said, his voice low but firm. "They're stronger, faster, smarter than we expected. And they're counting on us to make mistakes." Mr. Patel shook his head. "They're everywhere. How do we fight that?" John traced a route with his finger. "Not head on. We can't go head on. This is the biggest obstacle yet. We need to outthink them, not overpower them. Every step must be quiet, careful, precise." The group worked in silence, tension rising with each passing minute. They reviewed footage, studied patrol patterns, and planned small moves. Every minor mistake could cost them the farm and possibly their safety. Suddenly, a loud bark echoed from the far field. A dog, trained to attack intruders, was approaching one of their hidden paths. John froze. His heart raced. He realized then that the HOA had more than trucks and cameras. They had planned for resistance, for retaliation. Every trap, every guard, every patrol was part of a larger strategy to crush them. "We need a diversion," John whispered, his mind racing. "Something to draw their attention away from the main areas." "Lisa, can you handle the east field?" Lisa nodded, swallowing hard. "I can try, but it's risky." John met her gaze. "I know it is. But it's the only way." They split into smaller teams, each moving with silent urgency. Every movement was calculated. Every shadow could hide danger. The dogs patrolled unpredictably, forcing them to crouch, crawl, and hide. At one point, John had to roll into a ditch to avoid a flashlight cutting across the hill. His heart pounded, his breath came in short gasps, but he kept moving. Hours felt like days. By mid-afternoon, they had gathered enough evidence to expose the HOA's illegal actions. But the cost was clear: their patience, courage, and nerves were being tested to the limit. Then came the real shock. From the edge of the property, a vehicle appeared suddenly. It wasn't part of the usual patrol. It was a black SUV, sleek and menacing. Two men stepped out, well-dressed, confident, carrying briefcases. They walked directly toward one of the hidden barns where John's team was gathering evidence. John's stomach twisted. They were outsiders, likely hired legal enforcers or private investigators. They were precise, professional, and dangerous. If they found the team, the whole operation could collapse. He grabbed his radio, speaking in a low voice. "Teams, hide. Do not engage. Wait for my signal." The allies froze, blending into the shadows. Every heartbeat echoed in John's ears. The men opened the barn doors, scanning for any sign of intruders. They flipped through papers, checking the ground, and occasionally glanced at their phones. John's mind raced. Every move had to be perfect. A single mistake could destroy months of planning. Then, one of the outsiders paused. He looked at a pile of documents and smiled faintly. "They think they're clever," he said, almost to himself. "But they're sloppy. We'll find the rest soon enough." John clenched his fists. The HOA had underestimated him before, but these men weren't underestimating anyone. They were trained, calculated, dangerous. And they were now the biggest obstacle he had ever faced. He whispered into his earpiece, "We adapt. Change routes. Avoid direct paths. Focus on evidence, not confrontation. We survive this, and we move forward." By evening, the team had barely escaped detection. They regrouped in the old barn, shaken but alive. Every ally was silent, exhausted, their minds replaying the near encounter again and again. John looked at the group, his eyes sharp. "This is bigger than we expected. The HOA will come at us harder from now on. They've brought in professionals. But remember this: we've survived tonight. We've seen their moves. And we know their weaknesses. The obstacle is huge, yes, but it's not impossible." He paused, staring at the map sprawled on the table. The black marks of HOA control loomed large, but so did the red zones they still held. Each area represented hope, opportunity, and a way to strike back. This is the real fight, John continued. They want to break us. They want to scare us. But they don't know what we're capable of. Tonight, we were tested, and we passed. Tomorrow, we plan our next move. And this time, it will hurt them more than they can imagine. The allies nodded, renewed determination burning in their eyes. They had faced the biggest obstacle yet, and though fear lingered, courage had grown stronger. Outside, the farm seemed quiet, peaceful even. But John knew better. Hidden cameras, patrols, and trained outsiders were still watching. The HOA had thrown its heaviest forces, and the team had barely escaped. The real war was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. John whispered to himself, staring at the horizon, "They think this is the end of us. But this is only the beginning. We fight smart. We fight together. And we will take it all back, no matter the cost." The sun had barely risen, but the farm was already alive with tension. John stood on a hill overlooking the 3,500-acre land, his eyes scanning every tree, every fence, every shadow. Today was the day. The day they would take back what was theirs. The HOA had underestimated him, underestimated the community, and underestimated the fire that now burned in every ally's heart. He could see the trucks moving across the distant fields, men in suits patrolling with radios, dogs at their sides. They were confident, organized, ready to crush any resistance. But John smiled slightly. They had no idea what was coming. The group had spent weeks planning this moment, analyzing every patrol, every loophole, every mistake the HOA had made. Every ally knew their role. Every step had been rehearsed in whispers, in shadows, in secret corners of barns and basements. Tonight was the finale of months of preparation, but it would happen in the light of day, bold and unflinching. John's hand rested on the old map of the farm, the lines faded but clear. He traced the paths, imagining the HOA's moves. Then he looked up at the group gathered behind him. Their faces were tired, but their eyes burned with determination. Families, neighbors, longtime workers, they were all here, ready. "We do this smart," John said, his voice low but sharp. "No mistakes. No rush. Watch their every move, record everything, and hit them where it hurts. Today, they lose control. Not because we fight harder, but because we fight smarter." The plan was simple in theory but dangerous in execution. John split the team into 3 groups. The observers, positioned on hills, cameras ready, documenting every HOA move. The evidence collectors, moving through the barns and offices, grabbing files, illegal documents, and anything that could prove the HOA had overstepped. The decoys, distracting the patrols, drawing attention away from the collectors. Every group moved silently. Every step was tense. The first contact came sooner than expected. From a distance, one of the decoy teams triggered a small commotion. A vehicle stalled on a dirt path, smoke rising. The HOA men immediately rushed toward it, barking orders. Radios crackled. Dogs ran ahead, sniffing, searching. John felt his heart pound. The distraction worked perfectly. He signaled the evidence team forward. They moved like ghosts, slipping into barns and offices, collecting papers, recording signatures, noting illegal notices and mismanaged documents. Every piece of evidence was a dagger aimed at the HOA's control. Suddenly, a sharp shout echoed across the field. One of the HOA men had spotted the movement. A spotlight swept across the barn, catching Alex crouched behind a stack of crates. "Freeze!" a voice shouted. John's mind raced. There was no panic, only focus. He signaled Lisa, who was positioned behind the north fence. With a quick whistle, a pre-planned distraction, a small explosion of smoke and firecrackers, drew the spotlight away. Alex slipped back into the shadows. The HOA had expected compliance, fear, hesitation. Instead, they were met with courage, coordination, and clever tactics. Every misstep, every oversight by the HOA was exploited with precision. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by occasional shouts, barking dogs, and the crackle of radios. But slowly, the evidence mounted. Files, photos, recordings, they had everything. And with every successful move, confidence grew. Then came the final moment. John and the core team approached the main office, where the HOA's most sensitive documents were kept. The building was guarded, but not perfectly. They had underestimated how well John knew the farm. They had underestimated him entirely. He glanced at his allies. "This is it," he whispered. "Everything we've done comes down to this. No mistakes." They moved as a unit, silent and precise. One by one, they slipped inside, quickly collecting documents, photos, and files that proved the HOA had stolen control illegally. Each paper was a victory, each signature a nail in the HOA's claim. Suddenly, a door slammed behind them. A guard had returned early. There was no time to hide. John acted instantly. He blocked the door while another ally slipped out the side exit with the files. The guard shouted, lunged, but John's team held firm. It was tense, dangerous, a moment that could have ended everything. But the team was prepared. Within minutes, the evidence was secure. Every team regrouped at the hill, watching as the HOA men scurried across the property, confused and frustrated. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted. The HOA, once untouchable, now faced the consequences of their greed and arrogance. John looked at the group, faces illuminated by the setting sun. Exhausted, dirty, tense, but victorious. He knew this was more than just reclaiming land. This was a statement: courage, unity, and intelligence could overcome even the most powerful opponent. He raised the map, pointing to the fields, barns, and homes. "Today, we take back what is ours. Not by force, but by standing together, by being smart, by refusing to be scared." They thought they could break us. But they were wrong. As night fell, John sent a copy of the evidence to the authorities. Legal action was immediate. The HOA's control was challenged in every possible way. Houses, barns, and fields began to return to their rightful owners. The community, once silenced, now had a voice. And though the battle had been fierce, the war for justice was complete. The farm, the homes, the land, they were theirs again. John looked at the horizon, the moon rising over the 3,500-acre land he had fought so hard to save. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth. And in that moment, he realized something profound: courage, planning, and unity had won the day. The HOA had underestimated them. But the people of the farm had proven that no power, no matter how organized, how wealthy, how ruthless, could crush a determined, united community. The final showdown was over. But the story of resilience, cleverness, and courage would be remembered forever. The first light of dawn broke over the 3,500-acre farm, but this time, it didn't carry the weight of fear or tension. Instead, it shimmered like a promise, soft golden rays stretching over fields, barns, and houses finally free from the HOA's grip. Birds chirped again, the wind rustled through the trees, and the farm, which had been a battlefield for months, seemed to breathe with relief. John stood at the top of a small hill overlooking the land. His eyes scanned every field, every home, every path he had fought to reclaim. He could see neighbors emerging from their houses, smiling cautiously, as if testing to see if the nightmare was really over. Children ran across the fields, laughing and chasing one another, their voices filling the air. The farm was alive again, not just with crops and livestock, but with hope. John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything lift slightly from his shoulders. The fight had been long, dangerous, and exhausting. The HOA had underestimated him. They had underestimated the neighbors, the workers, the families who refused to give up. And now, the result was clear: courage, unity, and careful planning had triumphed. He walked down the hill toward the center of the farm, where the main farmhouse stood. Neighbors greeted him, their faces a mixture of gratitude, relief, and awe. One by one, they shared small victories from their own homes, how they had reclaimed barns, reopened locked gates, and stood firm in the face of intimidation. Each story was a testament to resilience, and John felt a surge of pride. Sarah, who had been his first real ally, stepped forward. "John, We did it. All of us together. I can't believe it. John smiled faintly. We did it because we had no choice but to try. They thought fear would make us small, make us stop. But we didn't. We stood together. And now, he gestured to the land stretching before them. Now it belongs to us again. To everyone who refused to give up. The evidence they had collected, combined with the support of local authorities, had exposed the HOA's illegal actions completely. Legal battles had begun, and every stolen acre, every seized house, was in the process of being returned. But for John and his community, the true victory wasn't just legal, it was emotional. They had reclaimed their sense of safety, their dignity, and their right to live freely on their own land. John walked through the barnyards, observing repairs being made, gates unlocked, and fences restored. Workers laughed again, and the sound of tools clinking felt almost like music. For months, the farm had been a place of fear and tension, but now it was alive with energy, a symbol of resilience. He paused near the oldest barn, the one that had been marked and threatened first. Memories came flooding back, the first day he had discovered the HOA's betrayal, the nights spent planning in shadows, the first counterattack, the obstacles, the final showdown. Every moment had led to this point. And John realized that victory had come not from anger or aggression, but from strategy, courage, and unity. John gathered the community near the main farmhouse. Today isn't just about reclaiming the land, he said. It's about showing what people can do when they stand together. The HOA thought they could divide us, scare us, make us powerless. They were wrong. This farm, these homes, they belong to all of us. And we defended them, together. A round of cheers rose from the group, voices echoing across the fields. For the first time in months, there was no fear, only triumph, relief, and pride. Then John looked around at the neighbors, workers, and families. He saw the tired faces, the hands calloused from hard work, the eyes bright with hope. And he realized something important: the lesson wasn't just about fighting the HOA. It was about life itself. It was about courage when the odds seem impossible, about unity when fear threatens to divide, and about careful planning when the stakes are highest. He spoke again, his voice calm but powerful. We've learned something important. That no matter how strong or clever someone seems, no one can take what truly belongs to a united community. We've learned that courage doesn't mean rushing into danger blindly, it means being smart, being prepared, and standing together. And most of all, we've learned that fear is temporary, but action, courage, and determination can last forever. Children ran past him, laughing, and one tugged at his coat. "Mr. John! Look! The chickens are back in the coop." John laughed, feeling the tension finally release. "I see it," he said. "And soon, everything will be back to normal. This farm, our farm, is alive again." As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the reclaimed land, John stood quietly for a moment, taking it all in. The barns repaired, the homes open, the fields ready for planting. The neighbors talking and laughing. The farm, once a battlefield, now a place of life and promise. He knew the HOA could never take it from them again. Not because they had defeated the HOA with force, but because they had shown courage, resilience, and unity. They had outsmarted the powerful, reclaimed what was theirs, and protected their community. And as the wind carried the scent of grass and earth across the fields, John whispered quietly to himself, "We fought smart, we stood together, and we never gave up." This is more than victory, this is proof that courage and unity can overcome anything. The 3,500-acre farm was theirs once more. And with it, the hope, pride, and strength of a community that refused to be broken.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it.